One of the things that I get a lot of times is about the process with scaling meta ads. So what I want to walk through right now is our exact approach and philosophy around scaling up your ad account. Too many times people come with a set budget in mind, or they want to get ahead and scale faster than what they can really handle right now, which it's okay to think like that. It's okay. It's great to have goals and big lofty outcomes that you want to achieve. But what you really need to break it down to is the numbers that you're doing right now. Most agencies make all these promises, they give you all these projections, so naturally it gets you ahead of the game in your mind, right? But you're never gonna actually know until you put ads into market and until you have a baseline of what you actually need to do. Even when you're going into a new approach, even if another agency is taking over, even if you have a new team member coming in, just because you did something in the past, that doesn't necessarily mean it's what's gonna work right now. Not to mention, there's also so many algorithm changes, there's so many platform changes. Even if you're just looking at your click attribution alone, from this month versus last quarter, it's gonna be completely different. You're gonna see your CAC probably higher from a click conversion, but that's a platform change. That's not necessarily something natural. So all I'm saying with all this is that you cannot just solely look at data as black and white either. So what I'm saying is you have to look at what you're doing right now and scale based on that baseline. Way too many people come to me and they say, we're gonna start off at spending 200 a day. Maybe a couple weeks go by, I say, hey, we need to keep testing these angles. We could bump it up maybe 20%, but we should stay there because we need to validate some other angles first. Or you need to validate something on your product page. You need more reviews. A lot of other reasons could be contributing to us recommending that. But then the client will come and say, I want to bump this up to $1,000 a day. Okay, but what that you did in the last couple weeks is actually validating that. So the best approach here is when we start with people, we start with a baseline daily budget. Now, once we start achieving over your break-even ROAS based on your margin, so to just back up for a second, some of the initial numbers that we get with every client we work with is your margin, your gross margin, number one. And then from there, we back calculate what your break-even ROAS would be. So for example, if you have like a 85% margin, I believe, or so, you'd be like at a 1.1 ROAS is your break-even. So anything above that would be what you're looking to scale up. Anything below that is where you're going to be maintaining and trying to test new ad angles. So a lot of times when we work with people, what they'll do is they'll come to us and say, hey, I want to start at this daily budget. We'll figure out what floor makes the most sense for them, because ideally you want your starting daily budget, your floor, to be something that you could do for like 3 months without even questioning it. So once you have that number in your mind, like what's something I could go to bed at night and like forget that I'm even spending every day, whatever that number is for your business. Normally for people, they'll start at like 5 or 10% of their gross cash flow, of their gross revenue. That's kind of the safest baseline, I would say, is as a starting point, and then work bumping that up a little bit more. But that all will depend on how advanced and how far along you are as a business. If you're new, you just want to choose a number that you could go to bed at night and completely forget about for 3 months. So once you have that number in mind, and once we've established that, now we start testing ad angles, we start finding what products are going to dominate your acquisition, and we keep testing and testing until we get over those break-even ROAS numbers. Then what we do is either manually week over week or through automated scaling rules, we then have set benchmarks that will scale up the campaigns by X percentage at certain points throughout the week. So these small percentage scaling automations, or just our manual workload, this will compound over time and be what scales up your campaign, because as long as you're maintaining those benchmarks above your break-even ROAS, your campaign is going to keep spending more and therefore should keep generating more. If it's not generating more, you would be pulling back, which would also be automatically done or through our process. So what we do with everyone we work with is you figure out a floor number that you want to be at, and then you figure out a goal number of where you want to be at. If, say, our immediate floor number is $500 a day of ad spend and our goal number is $2,000 a day, okay, well, we would do this process from that $500 baseline, and then we would work up gradually to that $2,000 mark. It could vary how long that takes, but I would say a couple months is pretty normal for something like that to allow the process to kind of compound on itself. So all of that, it's just very process-led. It's based on math and based on these benchmarks, based on your break-even ROAS. And that's just so simply put how it is. So what do you do if you're above that? You just raise the budget and keep spending more. You continue testing ads the whole time, push more creative diversity. If it's not working, like if you're below that number, we look at 7-day, 14-day, and 30-day periods typically, and then we'll have like 1 to 3 month outlooks. If you are below, you're testing creative until you are getting above and you're finding out what angles work, or you're doing conversion rate, and you're also doing conversion rate optimization on your landing page with that. So a lot of people will be, if we're starting off with a younger brand, it's going to be very conversion rate heavy, because a lot of times what we'll see is ads will work their way to getting pretty efficient clicks, but people are just not converting on their product pages or their collection pages. Then that takes a lot of heat mapping and analyzing what's going on your website when someone lands on your website, and then figuring out what can we do to improve your conversion rate. So we try to give suggestions ahead of time. A lot of brands are very proactive with this and they're great, and that helps a lot. Other ones, it's a work in progress. Conversion rate optimization, also getting your email flows and your retention marketing in place. Basically the meta goal that you want to be going after. Most people will think that they just want to lower their CAC. All they're focused on is lowering their CAC. And that's a lot easier to do as a new brand, because a lot of that is just data feed and getting quality data back to the ad platforms and just getting a good volume of quality data. When you're earlier on, you could lower your CAC very easily. But as you grow, what you'll see is that your CAC is going to generally raise consistently over time. Getting a CAC decrease as a multi-million-dollar brand is a lot harder than getting a CAC decrease as a $20,000 a month brand. The dynamics of scaling change a lot as you grow. So this is why, like any agency just promising to increase your ROAS or decrease your CAC, there's a lot of different variables to it. Like sure, if you're spending $100,000 a month on ads and I want to come in and just increase your ROAS, I'd probably just cut that down 10 or 20%. You'll probably see a ROAS increase right there just because you're simply offering less scale. You're competing less in the auction by spending that $20,000 less. That will most times just dynamically increase your ROAS. These are little things you learn along the way, but if you actually want to be scaling your revenue, whole different dynamic to be looking at. And this is what a lot of people get wrong, is they think in just black and white metrics. Is my ROAS increasing? Is my CAC decreasing? Like no. You want to look at your market and you want to analyze based on your LTV. If you can maximize your LTV to your market, then you can spend significantly more than anyone else. And this is how you dominate your market and what you want to be trying to do. Anyone I work with, if you adopt this mindset, I've seen this do complete wonders. And it's so powerful because most people that compete in any market will just be thinking like, how do I make things cost less? How do I get things lower? How do I compete? And that just ultimately brings you to a race to the bottom, because then you're just competing on price and cost. But now when you can maximize your LTV and make people worth more over time, you can now spend more to acquire people. And then all the conversation comes down to is how much can we spend on profitable acquisition? So if our benchmark is all we need to do is acquire people profitably and just spend as much as we possibly can against that, well, that's where you build a really powerful business that can outspend anyone. So if I'm taking a service business, for example, I'll be biased here. If my current CAC is $1,000 and I'm wanting to lower my CAC, well, that's one way to look at it. It might be hard to do that if I scale to a couple $100,000 a month in ad spend. But if I look at it the other way and I say, well, these customers are worth $15,000 to $20,000 over time on average, that's a whole different conversation now for when I'm looking at how to acquire them. So if I take that $20,000 mark, I can now realistically spend, as long as you can manage your cash flows properly, realistically you could spend like $5,000 to $7,000 to acquire a customer. Completely different. And from an e-commerce standpoint, same type of logic. If you can make people worth more over time, you can outspend your entire competition on acquisition, because now the agency's job in that is just figuring out how to just acquire profitably. It's not necessarily your benchmark becomes revenue from acquisition, and it's just gross revenue then. So as long as you're profitable over your break-even ROAS, it's spending as much against that as possible. And that's where the true power lies. And it's a whole mindset shift for so many business owners. And that's just touching on the very, very top of what we do. But a lot of it is a mindset shift, because the businesses that really take off and scale and dominate their markets, they not only have a good product, but they have this mindset and this approach with scaling that is just completely baselined in LTV and maximizing their customers over time, because that also reinforces a lot of good things, right? So if you're focusing on LTV, that means you're also focusing on customer experience. You're focusing on having a good product and improving that product over time. You're just focusing on building the best business that you can, because you want something that will last. But if you're focused on CAC and just short-term things, that's where you start discounting, focusing on sales, and focusing on essentially virtually giving things away compared to your competition, or trying to just get the sale instantly, hype metrics, just little things like you're following just trends. And that's not a longevity play at all. So the people that we want to work with are the ones that have that longevity mindset, and they actually look at their scaling from a whole separate mindset from anyone else. And that's how they dominate their market. And you create something completely unlike anything in your industry. It's really, really powerful. I cannot say it more.